Hello and welcome to day 18 of 100 days of VBA. We're still looking at loops today, a new type, the while loop today. So the while loop makes you continue to take the same action or a set of actions while a certain statement is true. So let's see how it works. So first we're going to define our function. So let's say while loop. Now, for our while loop, we're going to use a counter as an example. So we're going to define a variable with dim called counter as an integer. We're going to set our counter to 1, and you'll see why in a second. And now we're going to write our while loop. So we're going to say while counter is less than 20, and we're going to end it with the when, so while end statement. So everything between the while and the when are statements that we repeated while this statement is true. So let's use the same example as we did yesterday. So we'll write application.activeSheet.range, and then we'll join together column A and the counter variable. So we work our way down column A, dot value, and we'll set it to the value of the counter. Now it's important we set counter as 1. When we originally declared this just as an integer, it would have been set to 0. But obviously there is no row 0, so we would have got an error. Therefore, we're setting it as 1 to start with. And the second and much more important bit that we're going to include actually in our loop is this: counter equals counter plus 1. Because what's happening is when we get to the while loop, it's going to check if this statement is true. Counter's 1, it's less than 20. It's going to run these statements before we get to the when. And then when we get to the when statement, it's going to loop back up to the top of the while, check if that's true. And if it's true, run these statements again. And if it's not true, carry on with any other code that we might have down here. Now, it's incredibly important that we include our counter equals counter plus 1 here, because otherwise we'd end up in what's called an infinite loop. So if we just wrote that, then this would never end. It would just continue writing number 1 to cell A1 over and over until infinity. There's not like the for loop where it naturally increments things for you. You have to manually include that increment yourself. So let's run it. And there we go. You can see we've written 1 to 19 because we've done less than 20 as our test in column A. And you could do it the other way around as well. So let's say while counter is greater than 20, and we'll start it at 30. And instead of counter equals counter plus 1, we'll do counter equals counter minus 1. Remember, again, if we'd left that as plus and we started at 30 and had our test as greater than 20, it would have always been true. So we've just written down and down and down our spreadsheet until infinity. And let's write that in column B. Move me out of the way. Let's run that. There you go. So we've gone down from 30 to 21 because our test is greater than 20. So there we go. That's an intro into while loops and the while and when statement. And of course, the focus on our manual increment to make sure that our test eventually becomes false. Tomorrow we'll look at the do while loop, which works in a similar way, but with a bit more flexibility. And we'll carry on looking at loops.